to talk about, should I put new keywords that I want to add to my Google Ads account in a new or existing ad group or in a new campaign, of which I'm going to talk about in detail on this particular video here today. And I'm going to go through a real life case study here on how specifically, if you're going to do anything new, not just keywords, but also audiences that you're going to target with other display campaigns, demand gen campaigns, YouTube campaigns, how much of a difference it makes making the decision to target a new crowd of people, where you put your money in terms of, do you add it to a new campaign, new ad group? That makes a big difference in the performance of it, not only just short term, but also long term actually. So I'm going to cover specific details about that on this video here today as well for you. But with that said, I will go into some key facts here before I get into the case study that I wanted to share with you and give you the facts also about how to actually determine, specifically like the title of the video says, keywords and how to actually add them to your account appropriately and for maximum profitability for your business. For that matter, these key facts are: number one, Google gives preference to existing keywords when you add new keywords to an existing campaign / ad group. If you have a campaign with one ad group, you got 10 keywords in there, you add 5 more. What Google's algorithm is going to be, what it's trained and programmed to do is take those 5 keywords and pretty much, for the most part, ignore them, especially when you use smart bidding. That is, maximize conversions or maximize conversion value bidding strategy. Why do they do that? Because it's already, for your daily budget you have assigned to the campaign, it has to get a certain level of ROI or cost per lead for your campaign. It knows how to do this with the existing keywords. And if it's consistently delivering the result that you're looking for, it will continue to do that with those same keywords and totally ignore any of the other new keywords you added to the campaign and also ad group. Now, if it were struggling to get you the results you're looking for, it can start to try to use those new keywords. Of course, definitely. If it's not struggling, it will basically kind of not touch them or ignore them. So know that up front. Second key fact, Google also gives preference to existing ad groups within a campaign itself, given that a campaign also needs to deliver a certain minimum level of performance to your business itself, because it's programmed to do so. So it's looking to get a certain ROAS target, a certain CPA target, or just in general, deliver conversions. If you have 3 ad groups in your campaign now and you add a 4th, it will pretty much do the same thing as I mentioned with the keywords. It'll ignore that additional ad group and only tap into it unless it absolutely needs it to deliver the end goal that you've set up the campaigns to get. You may say here, well, what if I use manual bidding? Well, if you use manual bidding, it won't ignore it, certainly, but as I mentioned many times on previous videos here, you don't want to use manual bidding forever. Despite what anybody says, I guarantee you that you will get better results with smart bidding, that is maximize conversions and maximize conversion value bidding strategies, because there's machine learning involved in the process. It's not just simply there to get you a certain cost per lead or ROI. It's there to utilize the data about what's worked and what hasn't worked to get you better results on an ongoing basis. Not only just better ROI, but scaling the campaign itself as well. Manual bidding essentially doesn't do any of that. It just simply get your ad to show or not show based upon what you're willing to pay per click. It can't get anywhere near the results as smart bidding can for your business. So you're basically crazy for using manual bidding in today's environment, and that's been the case for a good 5 years now. I myself was resistant to the idea of using smart bidding. Oh, we'll give Google too much control. Then I realized I can't beat the results anymore. I mean, I would have a new campaign in an account with manual bidding. I just couldn't beat the results on the smart bidding campaign that the client set up, and then I had to change my ways. At the very least, you should be testing this. And it's not going to work right away, but if you give it 6 months to kind of spool up, you'll see for yourself as well. For that matter, I say all that as to you do not want to use manual bidding anyway. So you're going to be using smart bidding if you want to get the most out of Google Ads. And when you use smart bidding, when you add a new ad group to your campaign, it's going to tend to ignore that extra ad group, maybe not outright, but for the most part, and sometimes completely outright. And it really depends on the budget of your campaign. If your campaign says limited by budget and you add a new ad group to that campaign and it's on smart bidding, it will pretty much for sure not advertise that new ad group anymore because it doesn't need to. Why? And why would it? It doesn't make any logical sense why it would test that new ad group when you're not even telling Google you have an unlimited budget itself. So again, if the other ad groups aren't delivering very good results in terms of conversion rates or whatever, and it needs to get the conversion rate up to not send the campaign down to 0 impressions as a whole, then it can use that new ad group itself. For that matter also, and I want to just really drill this in, Google's set up with your smart bidding to get you the results. And if it doesn't get you results, your impressions are going to go down to 0. It's designed fundamentally to do this. When you have a new ad group and that new ad group's unvetted, untested, nothing about its Google doesn't know anything about it, that new audience within the ad group that you're testing or keywords, they ultimately have to go through a lot of inefficient ad spend to figure out how to run that ad group properly. The existing ad groups that have been there, even though they might not be as ideal, Google at least knows how to run those. They figured out the 10% of it or so that typically delivers a good return. They've already weeded out the rest. When you put that new ad group in there with the new keywords, whatnot, it's going to run inefficient by default, and therefore it's going to be really apt to not want to run that new ad group. So if you're really pressing to run a new set of keywords, you don't want to put this into a new ad group within the same campaign even, let alone keywords within the same ad group itself. And actually, if you're wondering when keywords will get ignored the most, it's technically inside that new ad group, not even putting them there versus in the existing ad group. Your real play here, if you want to give these keywords a fair shot because you feel confident about them and or just want Google to quit ignoring them for the most part and give them some decent traction, you want to put them into a brand new campaign because Google is going to, that's the main way that they're going to treat them as if they have to really test them out. And even then though, Google also gives preference to existing campaigns. So you got to know this as well. I've talked about many times on this channel how I set up campaigns at our agency for guaranteed results for our clients. If we're going to set up, usually the client has a rat's nest of an account with a bunch of random campaigns and random crap in there. It's not structured consistently at all. We'll set up new campaigns so that things are structured moving forward. But that new campaign will be run side by side with the old campaign because the old campaign has had history behind it. And like I was talking about before, it may not be set up right, but they know how to run it. They've already weeded out the stuff that wasn't good. And no matter how bad a campaign is set up, if they run it for long enough, eventually they'll learn how to run it properly or halfway decently. We'll have to run a hybrid strategy for a while. The new campaign will run in conjunction with the old campaigns for 6, 12, sometimes 18 months. And then we'll eventually shut off the old campaigns. Given the new campaigns were fundamentally better, they were fundamentally drove higher click-through rates, higher conversion rates. They still had, the algorithm had to test it out, refine the traffic behind the targeting options we have in there, and then also give us good quality scores for us to catch up the results on that new campaign to the old campaigns. With that said, the new campaign also, or campaigns, are going to not get very many clicks right away because Google is going to prefer to advertise old campaigns, assuming we're targeting similar people with both campaigns. They're going to run the budget at 10% on the new campaign. So in other words, you can have an old campaign that's been running for 2 years already with 5 keywords. You could have a new campaign with the same 5 keywords, structured better ad copy, better all of it. They're still only going to, for the first month, give 10% of the impressions of those 5 keywords through the campaign that's new versus the old one. They're going to give it just enough to get a little bit of data to try to figure out if this campaign is worth a damn, but not enough to really disrupt their search results because their goal at all times still is the search results they wanted to be performing at peak levels so people get the best experience out of Google. So they want to come back to Google and use ads in the future. And they're not going to take big gambles, even though they could get a big win right away if they tested that new campaign right away. They know most new campaigns don't do as well as old campaigns, so they're only going to slowly test it out. And if it starts to get good metrics with a tiny amount of ads, they'll give it a tiny bit more impressions, and that's why it takes 6, 12, 18 months to scale up a new campaign in that scenario. With the hybrid strategy I mentioned earlier, you have a new campaign, and even though that's the best way to get new keywords started, assuming you have a significant amount of them, otherwise, if it's just like one keyword, you could throw it in just the existing campaign. But to get a decent amount of traction on a whole bunch of new keywords, 100% every time put it into a new campaign. But still, even then, it's going to take a while for Google, even if they're different keywords than what you're targeting in the old campaigns or other campaigns that you have, it's still going to take time for Google to test this campaign out because they're very risk averse. It's just going to take a while. So don't be discouraged if your new keywords in your new campaign are not getting very many impressions. The system's set up that way by default. Just know that it takes time to just get new keywords scaled up. But the best way is a new campaign, because then at least at that point in time, you could put a high budget on it. That kind of forces Google to test it no matter what. Versus if it's in the existing ad group with smart bidding, you could run those new keywords or could decide not to at all and get 0 impressions forever on it and never ever get traction on those keywords. This one right here is the best option. New campaigns are the best option for testing new keywords if you have a significant amount, because it'll give the new keywords a fair chance right away in terms of getting impressions and so forth. You should always do extra research and thought into the new keywords you're targeting, because if you test keywords that don't work, it can affect the performance on your other campaigns, because you got something called a account level quality score that Google doesn't admit to that exists, but they do have this. And you don't want to be testing 10 things to find one thing that's productive when it comes to keywords. If you don't feel strongly about it, then don't do it. And then furthermore, if you have different keywords, and let's say you're picked all the low-hanging fruit in your market, you want to target info terms. So if you're doing gastric bypass surgery, you could test people that are typing in, what is gastric bypass surgery, and try to monetize it. Don't just do it the typical way that most boneheads will do, which is to try to send them to a sales page. That's not what they're looking for. Instead, have an ad that says, is gastric bypass for somebody who has XYZ? And see if they'll click to that ad, and then drive them to a page that has an article about this. And then have a call to action at the end of the article to get the lead. And that call to action is really just download the full buyer's guide, and you try to monetize them in the way that they'll work for that type of user. What people think is the traffic source is everything. And it's not. Of course, the traffic source is important, but you got to match up the right pitch with the right keyword in order for the magic to happen there. Unless you're just talking about purely buying searches, buy gastric bypass surgery, gastric bypass surgery clinics. And if you only go after the buying terms, you're leaving 2/3 of the possible revenue in the market in most markets, because there's more info searches than there are buying searches. Anyway, I'm getting a bit off into the weeds here. I wanted to make sure that you understood that you should be really doing research and having custom funnels for different keywords. And then when you have those keywords that you know that will work with the custom funnel that you've set up for those keywords, put it into a new campaign, give it some time for Google to actually start advertising it, noticing it's good, that you've put time in on this. It's not like the typical new campaign they see, which is bullshit. That also supports the rest of your account, given that they start to learn everything you do as an advertiser is quality. So any new campaigns you roll out with even more keywords in the future, they automatically assume sooner that it's going to be good, because everything you've done in the past has been, for the most part, quality, and for the most part, works. I have a case study here for a mole removal product that we sold for a client. And what I wanted to do was basically just explain here how much Google can really ignore an ad group that would be perfectly fine to get us customers profitably, but they're ignoring it and it never gets any customers. But before I get into that information, I want to make sure that you have subscribed to this channel. If you haven't already, there's no better information you're going to find online about how to make money with ads than you're going to find on this channel. I've got 20 years of advertising experience. Started this back when I was 21 years old, over 40 now. I have dozens of clients that are advertising firms, of which my job is the strategy at the firm on every account. Therefore, you're not getting information from somebody that's even more experienced than me anywhere, even on YouTube, talking about it and in detail like I am. And I may not have nice packaged information, do X, Y, Z, and you're rich. All that stuff is just bullshit anyway. You got to be able to learn stuff in order to put detailed campaigns together that will work. There's no better source of information than here. You should subscribe. I've got a great blog on my site at guaranteedppc.com/blog. You should check that out as well. If you have any questions about anything I'm covering here or any marketing related question, leave me a comment below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a question or comment on this channel. You can also reach out to me through my Discord group. Link is in the description. You also can reach out to me through my site at guaranteedppc.com, either to schedule a call with me, or I do full-on management services where I can set up your ads, run them, and make sure you get results, of which I do not charge any management fees until you get a certain minimum lift in your profitability of your ads up front as a trial or on a trial basis, of which no other agency does this. I also have templates available. If you are in a market that we've already been in already, we can sell you the ads, the landing pages, all of it that work for your market. So if you like managing your own ads, at least start there. I've got hundreds of templates. You should at least find out if we've got results in your market in another city or country that you're in, and taking the template on, save yourself a bunch of time and money utilizing that template. For that matter, getting back to what I was saying here in terms of case studies. Multiple product company, what we did here, similar to like what I was saying before, you're going to pick the low-hanging fruit in your market, ready buyers. Once you've done that, get the other 2/3 or more of the market to buy from you, going after people that are in the middle of the sales funnel or at the top. It's harder to do, but it's worth it. In this market, we would target people typing in mole removal cream, mole removal products, stuff like that. And that would get through our demand gen campaign that we set up, which is what this is referencing, most of our action. But we also had a ad group that targeted info keywords. These are custom intent audiences, by the way, where you create a custom audience, which essentially you put all your info terms in there. That tells Google, hey, if any of the people on Google have typed in how to get rid of a mole removal techniques, anything like this, I want to advertise to them on Gmail and on YouTube, of course, which is what demand gen campaigns are for. We had that. We also had a custom intent audience for anybody who's been to our competitor's website, which there's not that many competitors that are big companies at least. So that one's not too much of our sales coming from that. But we also had an ad group where we literally had somebody go and build us a list of every single dermatology clinic in the country. Given that most people that have a mole, they get it removed by a dermatologist, which they don't have to, but they do it. Ultimately, a lot of these people would get it done cheaper and without having to schedule an appointment at a dermatologist by just using our product. It's like a cream you put on the mole and it dissolves away, essentially. We targeted those people as well. Now, with that said, Google was relying so much on the results of our buyer keyword people that have typed in a buyer's keyword on Google in the recent past that they were ignoring the dermatology people. Namely, I feel because they tested it out a little bit and it didn't work right away, so they pretty much just put it on the back burner, which is what they're going to often do with you as well. And you got to be aware of this. This is why I make this video. The amount of conversions per month we were getting from this campaign at a $50 cost per conversion, which is what we needed to be profitable, was 127 a month on average from this buyer keyword ad group, 14 conversions a month from the info keyword ad group, at least at that point in time, 2 conversions a month from the competitors, which was getting almost no conversions, and 0 from the dermatology audience that I mentioned that we set up. Now, I knew for a fact there's no way these people that are looking for a dermatologist, given that 10% or around there of these people going to the dermatologist are going there for mole removal. All you need with display marketing is you need at least 1% of your audience to be ready buyers to make money. Because at that point in time, your advertising's concentrated enough to be, and it's efficient enough to be profitable, given that every person that sees your ad that don't click or don't want it, that eats into your profitability, of course. So your goal is always, how do you narrow down your targeting enough to get to the 1% of buyers or more in the audience that you have left that you're targeting? These buyers there. So, it's just a question of whether they're going to buy from the dermatologist or are they going to buy from us or a person like us. With that said, we had a new campaign broke out the dermatologist searches into the new campaign and a new ad group. And after 90 days of running that already, we had 19 conversions a month from this particular campaign. This shows you how much of a difference just simply breaking out an ad group that's not getting any impressions on an existing campaign will do. And this is a campaign, by the way, that wasn't limited by budget. In other words, Google's not saying that we can spend more on it. With smart bidding, with maximized conversions bidding strategy, getting the cost per conversion we want, but it was scaling through the ad groups / audiences that were doing much better. And it was easier for Google to get sales there. If you simply add a ton of ad groups to your existing campaigns, what you'll often see is Google will just be lazy and not target the other ad groups. And they'll just go with the main ones that they know work and choose to put more testing behind the ones that have worked in the past versus the new ones. This also applies with keywords, not to quite the same level, but also with that. Anyway, that's the case study that I wanted to share with you and wanted you to hear that so you can learn something, see a practical use case of this, how it affects you, why it would affect you. Ultimately, on the conversely to what I just said, I get a lot of complaints of guys that come in, of a client, and let's say they have a general marketing agency, but they hire me to do the PPC because PPC is the hardest thing to do in marketing for like a local service company. And so they'll have that marketing agency audit my work to know if I'm, doing my job, and they'll come back with a list of things, and then that client will send the list of things to me, and I'll comment on it. One of the most common complaints I get with those type of audits when they, inevitably eventually come up is, oh, you have way too many campaigns here, client. Some of these campaigns barely get any clicks. You need to consolidate these campaigns, given that I'll do different campaigns for different keyword types, different campaigns for different locations, so that the ad copy can be totally customized to the user each time, because that gets the highest click-through rates, and it does. You can't dispute this. So if somebody's in Long Beach and they're looking for plumbing services, they don't want to see an ad that says Plumbing LA. They want to see an ad that says Plumbing Long Beach, or at least it's preferred, and that gets higher click-through rates, and that will make you more money. Other guys will say is, oh, that's stupid because your Long Beach campaign only gets 2 clicks a month, so why do it? And my point is, it's irrelevant. The end goal is to get click-through rate. There's no badge or award I get from Google or from anybody by using as few campaigns as possible. You use as much as you need. Now, you can go overboard with it, absolutely, but if you are sacrificing a significant click-through rate by not having more campaigns, then you're just shooting yourself in the foot. There's a point where you can go too far with it, is my main point here, and then the new campaign that you do have that only gets so many clicks, technically you're not able to get really any mega traction on it because you need so many clicks for the algorithm to kind of see that it works well. You got to find a happy medium, ultimately. For me, though, as long as a campaign gets at least 10 clicks a month, I'm already happy with it, because eventually Google's going to rack up enough data on that campaign that even though it gets 10 clicks a month, it still has enough data to know how to run it properly. If it gets a click every month, that's a different story. And with that, most people on the side of too few campaigns, and it's mainly because they're lazy and they don't want to set up structures that will give them the higher click-through rate, or they're just brainwashed by Google that tells them that you don't need all these campaigns and ad groups and all this, which what I just mentioned on this video is the very contradiction of that, so to say, and they just don't do it. My point is, hey, you don't even have to listen to me. Just test it out for yourself. If you don't think you have the best results, go with more campaigns. Knowing that it's going to take time to break into new strategies. Google's not a light switch that you just come on and boom, it works. You got to give it 6 months for it to kind of show you how well it can do, but you got to test it and find out where the sweet spot is for yourself. Anyway, with that said, I'm going to wrap it up with that. Thank you very much for watching as usual, and I'll see you on the next one. If you want to see another video, click here. It is one of my best ones.